Hi everybody, my name is Brian Roberts. I'm a guitarist based out of Honolulu, Hawaii, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to play a major 7th chord. Major 7ths, so I think the prerequisite for this video would be being able to play your 8 basic open chords, so your cowboy chords G, C, D, E minor, A minor, D minor, E, and A. I highly recommend those, okay? Knowing those. The other thing that you might want to be knowledgeable about is intervals. And the intervals that we want to know are the third interval. I typically teach it as the song, "Oh, when the saints won 3, oh, when." That's the sound of a third. You're going to want to know the third, the fifth, Star Wars, fifth, as well as the 8, somewhere. So an 8, an octave. And the reason why you want to know these 3 elements is because that's what all these chords are comprised of. Even minor chords, but it's a flat 3, but don't worry about the specifics on that. But that's, anytime you play these basic shapes, you're hitting your audience and filling the air with the harmonies of root notes, thirds and fifths and octaves, which are just more root notes, okay? So be sure to know that, because we're going to leverage that in order to discover how to play major 7th chords. So just as a disclaimer, a major 7th chord is different than a 7th chord. So for example, D major 7th is not the same as D7. We'll cover what a 7 is in another video. So today we're working with the modifier of major 7th. All right. So very clear cut and simple. We'll start with D and then we'll walk through all the other chords quickly, but D. By now you should know D is a open chord comprised of the open D string, that's the lowest note, that's the root note, followed by the 2nd fret on the G string, followed by the 3rd fret on the B string, and the 2nd fret on the high E string. Really make sure that you know D starts on that 4th string, not these other 2. These other 2 are not part of the chord of D. There you go. And I'm using the pro tip of wrapping the thumb over the top so that I can hit all the strings if I need to. But I digress. We're talking about major 7ths. So what a major 7th is a chord comprised of the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. In fact, when you play a D, or any chord for that matter, D implies that you're playing the root, which is where it gets its name from, the 3rd, and the 5th. So that's what's already built in to the term D. Same thing over here, but don't worry about that for now. So D is comprised of the root, 3rd, and 5th. And you might be thinking, okay, well, those are 3 elements, and I'm playing 4 strings, so certainly I'm playing 4 elements, and you are, but you're kind of repeating something. And that's actually the secret here. So in order to modify your chord and turn it into a major 7th, what we want to do is we want to pinpoint the octave. So that's why it's important to know your intervals. You want to know your 3rd, your 5th, but most importantly for today, you're going to want to know your octave. So how do you find where your octave is? Well, you start with your root note where the chord begins and play the very next string. So I'm playing the open D string and then the 2nd fret on the G string. And I listen to those 2 notes and I ask myself, is that "Oh, when the saints"? No, that doesn't sound like "Oh, when the saints." Does that sound like Star Wars? Star Wars. Yeah, it does. So I'm pretty sure that's a 5th. Does it sound like "Somewhere"? No, doesn't sound like "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." So we have determined that the 2nd string that we're playing is a 5th. What we need to do is we need to find the 8. So let's see what the next string offers. So I'm skipping the string that we checked. I'm going back to the first one. And somewhere. Okay, so that 3rd fret on the B string in relation to our root note is an 8. Great. So this is what we need to find. We have found the 8, And what we want to do, because an 8 in music is considered a 1, so this is the redundant note. We actually don't need that. In fact, if I muted that string, I'll try. I'm muting that string right now and it still sounds good. It's a D. Because you have all the elements covered. You have the root, the third, and the fifth. So this octave note is abundant. We don't need it. But what's nice is that an 8 is awfully close to a 7. In fact, an 8 is 1 fret higher, 1 fret sharp of a 7. So in that mix, this is a 7. So what you do is you take your basic shape that you already know, find the modifier, and adjust it to including the 7. And now you have a D major 7th. Refreshing. Everything else still needs to be intact. This is just a standard D. This is just, you're hearing roots, thirds, and fifths. But when I take that root an octave higher and move it back a fret, it becomes a major 7th, a 7th, if you will. And now you have this very jazzy, refreshing sounding D major 7th. Okay? So I realized this might have gone over your head or I went too fast, so let's try it with another chord. So let's try it with A. So again, if this is true, we know our listeners are hearing roots, thirds, and fifths. That's built into all of our basic chords, roots, thirds, and fifths. All right. So we want to be able to find the octave, the somewhere distance, because an 8 is next door to a 7. So if we start on the root note, we're going to identify the intervals as we go until we find an octave. And then once we find an octave, we don't need to go any further. So the first two strings, we have root and then this. Bum, bum. To me, that's the Star Wars distance. That's a fifth. It's not oh when, right? It sound good together, but that's not the exact note. So Star Wars, the Star Wars distance is a fifth. And the fifth is not what we're looking for. We are looking for the octave. So let's check the next string from the root note. Whoops. There we go. Somewhere. Yeah. So that next string is an 8. So that takes me to what I'm playing with my middle finger, right? You can see how. So the note on my middle finger, which is the 2nd fret of the G string, it's been ages since I taught using frets. But anyway, that note, you're gonna back that note off by 1 fret. You're gonna go flat because 8 is 1 fret higher than 7. But I have to keep my other fingers there, so I might have to adjust my fingers. But moving that 1 note back and keeping everything intact, we are gonna get an A major 7th. Refreshing again. And that's the quality type of a major 7th chord. Kind of has this nice breezy sound to it. Okay, so you had D turned into D major 7th. You had A turned into A major 7th. Let's go down the let's try C. Okay, C. Well, C starts on the A string on this note, which happens to be a C. And again, the process is trying to find the octave. So I'm just going to go through the strings and identify them as we go. Bum, bum. Oh, when the saints. That's a 3rd. So again, we're looking for an 8 because we're trying to turn a C into a C major 7th. And the 7 is always 1 fret away from an 8. So we don't need a 3rd. How about the next string? Bum, bum. That's the Star Wars distance. Star Wars. Da, 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 da. Okay, so we don't need that either. So now I'm going to check the next string from the root note. Somewhere. Yeah, that's an octave. So our octave is here on our pointer finger, which is the 1st fret of the B string. And we do have access to 1 more fret, an open string, right? So if we release our pointer finger, we have now 1s, 3s, 5s, and 7s, or singular maybe. We have at least 1 1, at least 1 3, at least 1 5, at least 1 7. That's what I should say, I guess. So anyway, if I give this a crack, it's going to sound refreshing because that's what a major 7 sounds like. And lo and behold, very nice. C major 7th. And we can do the same with G. And again, to skip specifics, right there is an octave. If I back it up by 1 fret and include it, you're going to hear a very refreshing G major 7th. Now I saved E for last for a reason, because if we do E as we do it, so we find the octave, which puts it right here, that note, and we back it off by 1 fret. When I play this, it's not going to sound so refreshing. So let's give it a crack. Kind of messy, right? So, although this is technically correct, most guitarists will not play an E major 7th like this. You're not wrong, but what's happening here is that you have too many frequencies clashing with each other in the lower range, the lower register, and so this is, as they say in the business, kind of muddy. And you got to keep in mind, our guitar is kind of like a baritone instrument. It's similar to like a cello in the big scheme of things. So we're kind of more of a lower frequency instrument compared to others. So what most guitarists will do if they have to play an E major 7th is they'll play it as a bar chord an octave higher. And by the way, this works with bar chords. So if you know bar chords, you can do the same process. So this is an E bar chord on the A string, and the process is still the same. So you can use it as bar chords. Root 5th, root octave. Okay, so that note that I'm playing in the middle of my ring finger bar is an 8, so I need to back it up by 1 fret. And now this is what it's going to look like, and then it should sound like a refreshing E major 7th. Not so muddy like the previous example, because we're an octave away and the notes are a little bit more spread out. Much better. So you can do this with all your major chords, but as an added bonus, you could also do this to minor chords. So interestingly enough, you could do kind of a strange sounding name. Where'd my pen go? You could do D minor major 7th, or any kind of minor major 7th, if you will. And a lot of people go, what? That sounds weird. Well, if the name didn't sound weird, the harmony certainly will. So let's start with D minor, and we'll do the same process. We try to find the octave. Star Wars, again, checking from the root. So again, we're looking for an 8. Somewhere, and again, somewhere over the rainbow is an 8. So that's an 8. We back it off by 1 fret. And in the past, when we play a major 7th over the chord, it would sound very refreshing. I wonder what this is going to sound like. How's that sound? Do you like it? So this is considered a pretty dissonant chord, and out of context, a lot of people are going to go, ooh, that doesn't sound so good. So a minor major 7th sounds like this. And not used all that often, but it does get used from time to time. I like using it in the context of James Bond. That's your murder mystery spy chord. So you can then apply this also to your remaining minor chords. So if this is E minor, we find the octave, back it off by 1 fret to make it a major 7th. And again, we should hear that kind of spooky, mysterious, I don't know, however you want to describe it, but a minor major 7th. So this is E minor major 7th. Pretty dissonant, like I mentioned, but that is a chord. And then the remaining open chord we have is A minor, so we can play A minor major 7th. 1, 5, we need to find an 8 somewhere. That ring finger is my 8, so I'm going to back it off by 1 fret and keep everything else intact about A minor. So this is an A minor major 7th. So there you go. And that's how you play major 7th. It's a modifier to your basic chord. At all times, you always adhere to the basic chord first, and then you do the modifier. So there you go. That's your first chord extension, major 7ths. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, I'll be cranking more out in the weeks to come, so give me a subscription. And I'll see you at the next video. Aloha.